Welcome to Jason Samosa's Ufology Moment. Yeah, that's just one of many different theme tunes that I'm currently experimenting with. Welcome to Jason Samosa's Ufology Moment. Today, we're going to be talking about some fascinating developments that indicate that disclosure may be coming within months, not years. And the things we might be learning this year could be earth-shattering and moments in history. Who's saying what? What does it mean? Well, I'll tell you everything in just a second. So welcome. Today, local man is struggling with his mind. Today we're going to be talking about UFO disclosure and some comments by some quite authoritative sources that are just pregnant with possibilities. Some of the things people are saying right now, you would think that we are going to have UFO disclosure this year. And when I say this year, I mean this summer, and I mean within the next few months. There are some astonishing things being suggested by people in the know. Now, if you don't have much time today, I've put some timestamps in the description so you can hop forwards to the bit that you feel is most relevant to you. But to start with, there's actually some fascinating comments that have come from Gillibrand. Gillibrand is the senator who's really driving the current UAP disclosure mechanism inside of the Senate and Congress. And she was being interviewed on the Good Trouble show and had some very interesting things to say.
Should there be legal amnesty for past or present government employees or contractors who have been involved in keeping this from Congress and the American public, sort of as an incentive for these people to come forward?
That's what the whistleblower language in the 23 NDAA is supposed to protect. But if that language isn't sufficient, these people just have to tell us what part's not sufficient and what they would need in the defense whistleblower protection to cover them. We're happy to amend the bill this year. I mean, the goal is to give 100% amnesty and whistleblower protection in this space of unidentified aerial phenomenon. We can make sure that there's a setting, a SCIF or a top secret setting where they can give their testimony. We will not allow them to be harmed.
Wow. What a way to wrap up that interview segment. We will not allow them to be harmed. The implication there being that they actually might be subjected to some kind of harm. I mean, I'm not implying physical here, although in this world, who knows? But it seems like legal harm is being threatened against people who are trying to speak openly about what they know about this subject. People from within, contractors or defense organizations or literally working for the Department of Defense who have been involved in this subject. Clearly, there is some kind of conflict and war in the Pentagon right now over this issue. There are people who don't want anything to be said, and there are people who are trying to rip power away from those other people to make sure that this subject sees the light of day. It sounds like a sci-fi film, and it's kind of fascinating. Let's have a look at a bit more.
So what would you say to the elected or the unelected gatekeepers in government who do not want to level with the American public about UAP?
So my concern is that's not their job. This type of work should be public. We should have transparency and accountability. Anything that's not related to national security, we should definitely be declassifying.
That's a great question from the host. He was probing her by implying that there are gatekeepers on this subject matter within the Department of Defense. And what's really interesting is Gillibrand didn't respond by saying, well, we don't really see it that way. Look, we're all trying to work on this together. She just immediately takes what he said and builds on it, basically implying, hey, you know what? There are gatekeepers. There are people who are causing issues. There is a conflict here. Now, when witnesses come forward, they're supposed to be directed to Dr. John Kirkpatrick, the chap that we covered in the previous video. What you're going to see in this next interview clip is Ross Coulthart talking about how people are bypassing the AARO office and Dr. Kirkpatrick because they don't trust him to take their witness testimony seriously. Take a look at this.
There is a story behind that I can tell you.
Sure.
I know there are whistleblower witnesses who have gone directly to the Congress and circumvented Dr. John Kirkpatrick's office because they don't trust Dr. Kirkpatrick. Because what he has done by saying what he said publicly to the Congress is apprehended bias. He's indicated an unwillingness to take the issue seriously. I think he should really be questioning whether he should stay on the job or not. The bottom line is there are a lot of senators and congressional representatives who have heard differently inside secure SCIFs in the Congress from what Dr. Kirkpatrick is representing to the Congress in public hearing. Congress has heard evidence from witnesses about the program, about aliens.
Yeah. No,
It's happening. Sean, it's happening. This is happening. While you and I are talking, there are people coming forward to your great Congress with evidence of a secret that has been concealed from the world. This is happening.
I'm just going to be genuine here for a second. You know what? When I make these videos, I'm really aware that people I know in my personal life might see them. And I feel very conscious about the term aliens. I try and avoid it. I try and avoid any images of things that might conjure up themes of Hollywood or anything that could be mocked. To hear Ross Coulthart just speaking openly and using that term, it's kind of shocking. But clearly what's going on is as Congress is being briefed, they're receiving some of the deepest information that's available. They're not just being told that there's craft in the sky and we don't know what they are. People in these committees are hearing detailed information about something that sounds frankly phenomenal. And now we've got these two information streams that are happening. On the one hand, you've got the official route through Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, but now people are going direct to the congressmen and women, which means that the people who represent the people of the United States of America are becoming aware of things that you and I probably can't even imagine. The way Ross Coulthart is talking about it there, it sounds like there's some real gravity to what's being said, and I can't help but be tantalized and fascinated by what the content of that could be. Now, on to the really interesting stuff, right? Now we're going to have three different people saying a very similar thing, and the thing is this. The disclosure process that's happening right now, it's going to escalate seriously over the next few months this summer. Now, you may say, people are always saying it's going to happen, it's just around the corner, but they are being very specific and very detailed, and we've got three people independently coming forward saying exactly the same thing. Let me share some of these clips, and we'll run through the analysis together. First up, it's John Ramirez.
You have mentioned a couple of times tonight on the show about the feeling of something imminent.
I would say, let me say months, meaning like sometime in the calendar year before the holiday season. What's happening in the near term during this calendar year, I think it's going to culminate into some kind of event or some announcement, or I don't know how it's going to be portrayed. I don't know because I'm not managing the process, but there will be an opportunity for current and former government officials to come forward and disclose, at least at a minimum, that what is flying, what we're seeing, represents non-human technology, that it was not built by humans. That much is a huge deal for the government, which has been saying that we don't know what it is, if it's serial, this and that, or whatever. We have no idea, when they do have an idea. And I think they will reveal that, yes, we do have an idea, and we know that it's non-human. That will lead to other opportunities for the government to come forward. We have to pass that big hurdle that it's been hinted at, but we're not there yet. Non-human technology, non-human craft, non-human pilots.
For those of you who don't know, John Ramirez is a retired CIA agent. He was very, very senior. So he was a GS-15, which is as senior as you can be in the CIA without going to the SES rank, which is the equivalent of general. He was in a very senior position, a long-term serving member of the CIA who was starting to speak openly about this subject over the last year or two. Now, the thing to really take away from that, I think, is non-human. Go back to 2017, up till today, what have we been told so far out in the open? Apart from all of us who, watch the interviews and deep dive into the subject, out in the open, what has been stated is that there's something anomalous, something pretty astonishing or anomalous in the sky, and that we need to pay attention to it. Now, what is the next step if you want to open up the disclosure box? It's to start asking who's piloting these things and to start giving some definitive answers. What John Ramirez is saying here is that based on what he's been hearing and the relationships that he's got and the circles that he's in, is there is going to be a series of witness testimonies coming out this summer where people are going to say definitively that this stuff is non-human. And we've always known it. I want you to take a moment here and ask yourself, what would this mean for the world? If this summer, if in 2 or 3 months, we are watching on our TVs, if we are hearing in the news that someone like a very senior CIA director or an undersecretary of defense, and if you watch the full interview, he hints that these are the kinds of people who might be giving this testimony. If these people come out and say, we know the beings piloting these craft, the origin of these craft is non-human, what would the implications be for the world? Can you believe that we're living in a time like this where this is something that could happen this summer? He's talking about months. This is wild. Let me know if you're as excited as I am. And the reason I'm excited is not just because it's John Ramirez. The reason I wanted to make this video is because multiple people are saying exactly the same thing. Let me give you the next clip. This is Stephen Bassett in this interview. What he is saying is exactly the same as John Ramirez. It's almost as though they're getting it from the same source.
Look, any day now, there's going to be an announcement. It'll be a briefing or something, not a briefing, but like a press release or a news article is going to turn up on CNN that the Senate Intel Committee is announcing that on such and such a day, they're going to hold a hearing on the UAP issue, taking testimony from members of the current and former members of the United States military. That could come tomorrow. All right. The day that hearing starts, you can start literally counting down the days until the president confirms the ET presence, and it will not take many days. 2 weeks would be more than enough. Once that testimony comes out, game over. Then it's just a question of how much of it does it take for people to go, that's it, we've got it. At that point, the president will know, and the president will act, and we get disclosure. It should happen this summer.
Well, again, I need to take a moment here to introduce Stephen Bassett. So Stephen Bassett has been lobbying the US government to deal with this issue for 30 years. So he is someone who is extremely well connected in the world of Congress and the Senate and all the people who are now involved in this process. He knows and he's got those relationships. Listening to Stephen Bassett here, what did he say at the start of the interview? Any day now, you are going to hear that there's going to be these hearings. So these hearings are coming up. They're being planned as we speak. There are going to be people coming forwards who are going to say things that are so significant that the president is going to have to say something afterwards, within days or possibly weeks. It's going to be so earth-shattering, so dramatic that the president is going to have to say something. Now, what kind of thing could that be? Well, I think John Ramirez just told us. It's finally the confirmation that it's time to stop talking about UFOs or UAPs, and it's time to start talking about the beings that operate them. One final interview here from Ross Coulthard.
No, that leads me to what I wanted to ask is how do they feel with you, talking about some of the things they tell you publicly?
They're encouraging me to, because what it's doing is it's bringing other people forward. I wish I could tell you everything I know right now.
Me too.
I mean, believe me.
I can edit it up.
In a few months' time, you'll be looking back at this interview and you'll be going, Roscoe, what you knew. There's stuff coming down the track, and I think it's going to resolve this issue once and for all. I really do.
Wow.
So that was Ross Coulthart from just a few days ago in early May, explaining that he knows something that's coming up in the next few months that's just going to unleash this whole issue. Now, again, what could that be? What is this dramatic event that's coming in a few months? Clearly, Ross Coulthart knows that someone is going to say something, or some kind of evidence is going to come forwards that is going to keep moving the dial, and it sounds like the dial is about to take a major jump. Now, here's a question to think about, right? On the day that somebody confirms, someone authoritative confirms that what we're dealing with is not of human origin, a huge conversation opens up. I expect they're going to communicate it in a very specific kind of way. Somehow they need to drop the hint, they need to open up the discussion, and they need to get people thinking about the possibility in a new way. I personally, and I'm not an expert here, I'm not an insider, but I personally can't see a world where they're going to tell us that aliens exist and they're here. I think what's more likely is we're going to get authoritative people suggesting that the evidence weighs extremely in that direction, suggesting that they have evidence or that their studies have confirmed that this stuff is not human, suggesting that we look very much at that end of the scale and start to adjust our consciousness over a period of the next year or so. And the reason I say that is because the moment you say that aliens exist, the moment you say that aliens are here, there's going to be a lot of fear. That is a terrifying thing to reckon with. Now, clearly the Department of Defense believes they've got this situation under control, right? But regardless, there are 8 billion people on this planet. There are multiple different religions. There are multiple wars going on. There's multiple geopolitical situations to take stock of. And introducing the idea that there are non-human visitors to our planet destabilizes all of these things. So So I personally would be extremely surprised if they are that blasé about it, if these hearings happen at all. I would suspect that they're going to be a lot more subtle, but subtle in a way that genuinely moves the needle forwards. Subtle in a way that doesn't force us to accept that aliens are here, but forces us to move away from the idea that it's Russia or China. The final pieces to chew over here come from John Ramirez and Stephen Bassett, both of who give us an explanation about why it needs to happen so fast. Let's have a look at these clips.
It needs to happen before the political season, which starts obscenely early in this country, right? As you know, if they can get it done this summer, the president's made the announcement, it means that every single person running for Congress, running for Senate, running for governor, running for anything, is going to start their campaign in a post-disclosure world where the presence of this non-human technology and presence is confirmed. It is fact. And the whole thing will get infused in the 2024 election, which means it becomes democratized. And so now the ET presence becomes a matter before the entire American people to deal with, not just the AARO office or some members on the Hill, because they will decide in 2024 which candidates will be appropriate to elect with respect to this new paradigm we are living in.
And I'll just skip straight forward to John Ramirez.
The most important thing, the reason why they want to do it so quickly now is they want this to be part of the 2024 political process for the president, the primary campaigns, the debates in front of the mainstream media correspondents, of being able to bring up this question in that type of forum, where before you get the giggles, right? No one wants to say anything and nobody wants to answer the question because they don't want to be cast as, oh my gosh, this guy is crazy. He believes in ETs and UFOs. Well, suppose, one of the people that will come forward used to be a head of an intelligence agency at a high position, either the director or deputy director, or the secretary or undersecretary of a major department, let's say defense, just to pick one. And so this person says, I know that, what's been visiting us is non-human. We've known it all along. To make it part of the presidential process, we would want the mainstream media correspondents to ask these candidates, what do you feel about the UAP issue? Because, all of these former government people who served in previous administrations of previous presidents said this, for the record. If you become president and you then appoint a secretary of this or that, what is your position on the UAP issue? And that opens up more disclosure. That opens up an opportunity for the 2024 winner of the presidential campaign to be the disclosure president.
I think the thing to take away there is that this is a very strategic play. If we can get some bombshell testimony that moves the dial forward enough this summer, then as the political season opens up and people are debating in order to get the vote of the American people, well, if the UFO, UAP, extraterrestrial, non-human, whatever you want to call it, if that issue is on the table, then there is no way it's ever going back underground, because now people are chewing it over and debating it in a democratic context. It gets, as Stephen Bassett said, democratized. It's out in the open. This is exactly how it should have been from the start. And it means that the subject is being held to account through a democratic process. One candidate says, hey, you know what, I'm going to take this seriously. And so the people can vote whether or not they support that person and their approach to this issue. Someone else might choose to take the establishment point of view and say, hey, I don't think this is anything. And guess what? People's votes can decide whether that person's perspective is going to last. It is the ultimate way of democratizing the issue, hence the rush to try and get some hearings this summer. Clearly, people have realized we can probably pull this off and we can probably get this subject matter out into the open ahead of this presidential election. Absolutely fascinating. So that's the UFO news that's going on at the moment. We've got whistleblower testimony coming out. We've got people bypassing the AARO office. And now we've got 3 independent people who are in the know, who are connected to people inside of the defense establishment, telling us that disclosure is coming in months, not years. I cannot believe it. And I literally mean that. I'm not going to get too excited about this until we see it happen. But clearly there is an effort underway right now to move disclosure forward. What a time to be alive. Take a moment right here. Take a moment just to think, if this does happen this year, what kind of world are we going to be living in? What kinds of questions are going to be asked? How might this change us and the world in which we're living? I live and breathe for this kind of stuff. I think it's exactly what we need right now. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. I've got another big video coming up soon that I've been working on, which deals with a former president and his relationship to this subject. And I think you're going to find it absolutely fascinating. So stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, do all that, guys. All those little things, they matter so much to Jason Samosa. I can't even begin to tell you. They are so valued by me. And I appreciate every single one of you who takes a moment to comment, to share your thoughts. Thank you. What an exciting time to be on this journey together. I'm Jason Samosa. This has been Jason Samosa's Ufology Moment. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, cheers.